After a judicial recount, the Quebec riding of Terrebonne has flipped to the Liberals, who have beaten the Bloc Québécois by one vote. The results mean that the Liberals have 170 seats in the House of Commons, just two shy of a majority government. On Wednesday, the Chief Electoral Officer of Canada announced the judicial recount after results showed incumbent Bloc Québécois MP Nathalie Sinclair de Gagné beat her Liberal challenger by 44 votes. Our correspondent Wyatt Sharpe joined us to unpack the recount.
On election night, the Liberal candidate in the riding of Terrebonne in the province of Quebec emerged victorious, managing to squeak by just a couple of votes. But after a recount, the Bloc Québécois candidate Nathalie Sinclair de Gagné, it looked as if she actually had managed to squeak by. And then after that, the Liberal candidate actually protested that for a third time through what's called a judicial review, which is something that ridings have kind of the ability to do in scenarios where it really is super close with these kind of razor thin margins as we are seeing here, which ultimately has resulted in the Liberal candidate in that riding winning by just one vote. Now, I can't think of a more recent example, when something along these lines has occurred, and certainly it is going to create kind of an interesting dynamic given the threshold for a majority government in the House of Commons is, of course, 172 seats. The Liberals on election night, when it was looking as if the Bloc Québécois was going to win that seat, was at 169 seats. Now, with this riding, it's looking like they could be at 170 seats potentially. Now, interestingly enough, there is still another riding where it is possible that the Liberals could come out on top after a recount, kind of a similar scenario to what we saw play out here, albeit it's not quite as close as Terrebonne was. But certainly that's an interesting kind of point to mention. That would then bring the Liberals up to 171 seats. And then after that, really, now they're only one seat away from the majority threshold, which could simply mean maybe convincing the likes of Elizabeth May or potentially an NDP MP, of which there's not very many, of course, only 7 of them in the House of Commons right now, to join the Liberal ranks. Then that would kind of solidify them the ability to have a majority government, which would, of course, create for more stable governance for the Liberal Party over the course of the next 4 years. They would be able to pass kind of their agenda without having that uncertainty of whether or not the NDP or the Bloc Québécois would hold the balance of power to ultimately allow them to pass some of the agenda items that they are looking to get passed. Certainly, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out over the course of the next little while and over the course of the next few weeks as well, especially just given kind of how Parliament is going to be taking shape. You have the announcement, for example, of Prime Minister Mark Carney's cabinet that's going to be coming out tomorrow. Elizabeth May saying she would actually consider switching over to the Liberal Party if Mark Carney would guarantee her a cabinet position or perhaps support her in her bid to become Speaker of the House of Commons. So certainly it's kind of a game of quid pro quo, if you will. One person wants something in exchange for joining the party. But Mark Carney, if that could again solidify the ability for him to have a majority government, people are telling me that he has his eyes wide open at this point and he's not closing the door to any possible option.